are wins within your job, and FinOps is one of them,
Mm-hmm.
where you can meet the agendas of this guy, this guy, and this guy, and
Right.
this guy or gal,
Mm-hmm.
right? With one simple strategy.
Hey everybody, Brian Hoagley here with SideChannel. Welcome back to cisolife. I am super excited to have here today the other founder of SideChannel, my good friend and partner, Taylor Lehmann.
Good morning. No special clap from me. I'd say like maybe when I started my career, that focus started at that layer 3, layer 4.
Sure.
Right? In physical attacks, we were really concerned about how secure the thing was in the rack in the data center.
Right.
Right? Without realizing that, you know, most of the fun could be had at higher layers in the stack. So not to go total geek out, but we've transitioned from being really super focused on physical security, although that's important.
It is important,
But it deserves our time. Our time is more interestingly spent protecting each other and protecting our systems and our sites and our people and our staff and our apps.
right.
Focusing on that app and presentation layer.
I've had this discussion before with somebody where we looked at kind of like security 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, however you kind of want to break it up, where it's like back in, let's say, you know, like I would even say like probably 2006. And then you had like this 2006 to 20, I would say probably 2015. And then you had this 2015 plus, like before 2006, it was all very, you know, we were securing data centers. We were worried about servers literally walking out of data centers, USBs like stealing data, people just walking out. And then it became, oh, now it's really network based, but it still wasn't, you know, where I think now it's application, right? So you had like network security, and then you had application security kind of.
I think as we've like gotten better at these things.
Oh yeah.
The
focuses were like
the bars move up
here, and here, and now everyone's
and closer to the user too, right?
Right.
So, you know, the distance between this guy. This is like a friendly Buffalo Bill. I got the blue. Maybe I'll get a little red in there too. Very patriotic little stick figure. Whereas he's really far from here.
Right.
And yet for a long time, we thought the emphasis needed to be on protecting this first.
Right.
And this last. Right. Because nobody understands this.
Right. Or even the network area, which is probably why now you see organizations, right, the amount of spend that they had in this area, right? Business continuity, disaster recovery, data center security, physical security, and it's weaker in these areas.
So like the attack surface, eventually, right, we lost this part when we killed physical.
Right.
Right. The network's getting stronger, right? We're
right.
very perimeter focused, or have been for a long time. And so when we started crushing network security, getting good at that, right, the attack surface shrunk to kind of this piece.
Mm-hmm.
And right now we're playing in this little world,
right,
where so much emphasis has been getting here and here, yet we've still got a majority chunk according to this fabulous diagram that we've made.
We just made up.
This is technically part of where boom was, right? At one point.
Yep.
This was it as well.
Right.
Right? But now we're still playing over here, and there's lots of little booms happening daily. And this is why we push, you know, the really important 3 controls we've talked about.
Mm-hmm.
The things that save your butt here happen to be more often patching 2-factor or multi-factor.
Right.
And strong email hygiene. In fact,
right.
those are the 3 things that if people got really, really good at, we're going to start to see the shift away from this layer to whatever else is over here. Would you say money?
Money and politics.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Who knows what that's going to look like, but there's so much opportunity here.
It'll be I think, you know, what we always joked about it when we talked about layer, you know, the layer 8 and 9. Everyone always says, oh, it's money and politics. But, you know, the CISO being in the C-suite, right? When you look at it, it's organizational representation structure. This is actually the area where security is being changed or being kind of fought over. Who does the CISO report to? how much funding do you get to be able to implement any of these types of controls?
Right.
Right? Whose funding does it come out of? Because it's not like this magic money tree now comes up and you're like, oh, here's a whole pot of cash. It's going to come out of some P&L. It's going to come out of an IT budget. It's going to come out of whatever organization maybe you fall underneath now. Maybe you report to legal. Maybe you report to finance. Maybe the CIO is the security organization.
What's up, guys? Yeah, no, absolutely. You know what? So there's definitely like the controls and the things you need to be good at shift left to right as well,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So to your point, like business acumen, savvy, the ability to move a boardroom, tell a story,
Right.
secure a path forward, really important. But also, like, you're starting to see things like the FinOps movement. How familiar are you with this?
I'm not, no. Tell
So
me.
FinOps is, it's a term. I think it takes many meanings, but it's really the managing your IT through the amount it costs you to run it. The screen is clear. That's amazing. Just as I was about to make some killer points.
So you're going to talk about FinOps.
FinOps. So FinOps, similar to the term DevOps we've heard before, which I like to define as just DevOps. People just being nice to each other.
I like that.
Which is about breaking down silos across a organization who makes products and then ensuring that the products have a pull through a manufacturing process. And in the case in a software company, it's building software so that it can be released quickly and is
Right.
high quality. FinOps kind of extends that whole idea of automating and working up and downstream to have a really efficient process to build things. FinOps is kind of the next layer where, instead of manufacturing software for
Right.
an organization and getting it into production, FinOps takes the approach with influencing culture and strategy around accountability for spending money. So cloud ops or cloud services like Amazon, we talked about a minute ago, Amazon, Azure, these cloud
Right.
services, they offer the ability to rent hardware and software for a service.
Right.
When that became a thing, people started growing to it. People loved the idea. It's an easy way to get into the cloud, build software, create value for customers, sell it, run it, scale it quickly. But it created this issue where there was a lot of new compute getting deployed, right? So
Right.
new systems, new servers getting pushed out.
Sprawl.
Right. Sprawl occurs.
Becomes an issue.
It's an issue for security perspective because who's going to keep track of all that stuff, right?
Right.
And small, medium-sized businesses love the cloud, right? Love this unlimited compute potential, but don't also love the fact that, hey, it may not be a great idea to let anybody in the company just spin up a server with customer data on it,
Of course not. Right.
right?
That's the downside to saying, hey, I don't have to have an IT organization to have to manage all of this.
Still got to do security,
Right.
right? Still got to manage all this stuff,
Right.
Many organizations are ill prepared for it,
Right.
They just want to get in and run it,
Right.
But the cloud is the Wild West.
It's the Spider-Man complex, right? With great power comes great responsibility.
Ooh,
It's like
Spider-Verse 2 is coming out, by the way. But yeah, I love Spider-Man. And that is a great example. I mean, we're creating these networks that just grow and grow and grow until the point they're unsustainable, not just to secure them, but also financially. But the two actually work together really interestingly. So, as much of it a business problem as it is for companies to operate in the cloud with this kind of unmanaged perspective that we see so much of.
Right.
We see the S3 buckets,
yeah.
public storage being used in weird ways. It's a lot because we can't keep track of all this cloud stuff that we got going on.
Right.
FinOps is an interesting take on that. So FinOps is the operating model for the cloud. So it looks at that the financial issues created by the sprawl, and it pushes practices, methods, and activities to manage the sprawl,
Yep.
which in doing so actually contribute greatly to cybersecurity posture.
Sure.
So let's just say, Brian, you and I work for a company. You've got 1,000 AWS accounts. I've got 100. You've got lots of personal data. I've got lots of personal data. In a non-FinOps world and pure just cloud world, we could be managing our servers, our resources, whatever, two very different cost points. But it's very easily possible that my 100 accounts could cost a hell of a lot more than your 1,000.
Sure, because your compute could be,
Right. So it's
Out of
that variable.
Got
Now
it.
FinOps comes down and says, why do you have 1,000? Why do
Right.
you have 100? Can you do it with less?
right.
Right? Can you optimize the resources you have to cost less? Therefore, reducing the amount of servers and services, potentially reducing the amount of data you're storing.
Right.
So looking at it from all those angles, you quickly realize there's things you can start pulling out of these cloud deployments that actually save you money and make you more efficient and force you to re-architect things and be innovative to come in. Great for the business, but awesome for cyber, because the biggest problem I think we'd all agree that we see, especially when SideChannel goes into talk to customers, is where's all your stuff?
Right.
And there's all sorts of stuff, especially if these organizations have not adopted a financial accountability model like FinOps. The first thing usually that any smart security person would do is say, hey, let's not try to secure all the stuff. Let's get down to the very stuff that matters.
Yep.
Let's kill the stuff that's not valuable or that creates risk for us.
Critical first, ancillary next.
Right.
Focusing on.
And oftentimes a great argument in doing that sits with the C-suite is, and we can do it for less money.
Right, which is ideal.
Right. So looking at maybe orienting your cloud security approach a little bit more to, not just let's put all the antiviruses on all the things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's look at, have we deployed our systems and services in a way that maximize value, lower cost, and in doing so reduce our attack surface.
Right.
So those two things actually work together really nicely.
That makes sense. So if you're somebody who's maybe not even in the cloud, you could probably apply financial operations, or that's at least however you want to call it, that same lens to your on-prem organization. Like, again, critical security control number 1 and 2. Do you know what you have in hardware? Do you know what you have in software? Basically, do you know what you have? Also important question for the CFO. Right.
Because he wants the same answer.
Right. Yeah.
But think, though, less is better. Simple is better. Less complex cloud deployments cost you less money and are probably more secure.
Well, yeah.
Inherently.
Right. You have a smaller attack surface.
Exactly.
You have smaller things to manage. So you're going to make your CFO happy. You're going to make your CIO happy. You're going to make the CISO happy. Ultimately, you're going to make the CEO, the shareholders, whomever, the organization. You're going to be able to drive down cost for the consumer, on the tail end. But you're right. Like, these three folks having an alignment on what do we have, right? I mean, like, take it to again, I think a lot of folks that we've talked to aren't necessarily all in the cloud. They maybe have some, we won't call legacy, but some older, constructs for their org.
Yeah, cloud just makes it easier for you to make changes.
It's just a piece of real estate, and that's where I was going. It's like, this is just a real estate play. Why do you have, an office or a building that you own that isn't fully rented out? You're not maximizing your space, but you're paying for it. You're doing the same thing in the cloud, where it's like, why do you have all of this when you can just be, set up in a smaller, 500 square foot space instead of having this 10,000 foot square space? Like, why did you get this whole, like, I understand you wanted to have growth. The beauty about cloud is that you can start out with the 500 square foot office space, and then as you need it, you can immediately move the walls out. And the walls allow you to move back and forth, and you can address, it's like, oh, I don't have 100 entry points, now into this organization. That
surprisingly useful security control.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah, knowing what you got and then having less of it. Like, awesome.
Yeah. And it, again, it goes back to the rest of the C-suite that you want to, you're trying to, as a CISO, work with and not just be this, stepchild off of, IT. That's like, go take care of the things while we go, do business.
This insecure, adversarial, gotta secure it all, gotta own it all. Yet there are wins within your job, and FinOps is one of them, where you can meet the agendas of this guy, and this guy, and this guy or gal, with one simple strategy, which is find ways to do more with less and be more secure because of it.
Yeah.
Boom.
So coming back, we were going to talk about like IoT inside of the enterprise of the corporate. And again, in your previous role or in your current role, right, you've seen that having been a CISO, so now you have oversight of, where it is in the environment. And it's interesting, people kind of gloss over what's connected and what constitutes IoT and what's something as a CISO or a security practitioner you should have eyes on that previously people were like, oh, that's whatever. I'm not going to pay attention to that because that's not a computer or a server or there's a person that's not behind it. Like, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, I'd say I think it's interesting every time I talk about IoT and organizations and peers and colleagues say, oh, that's not an issue for me.
Right.
It's an issue for everybody.
Right.
In fact, this light board that we're on, I'm pretty sure is somehow siphoning personal data off us right now. But not to be paranoid. IoT is everywhere, right? And it's not new.
No, it's not new.
Like it's been around for years and years and years, way before I was even in the computer science field, frankly. And I think it's increasingly it's what the only thing that has changed is that it's become increasingly more important for us to understand it and manage it. So you were alluding to this, but I used to run security for a large hospital system.
Right.
You know, more connected devices than people, more connected devices than laptops and desktops.
Sure.
I would argue that that's probably true for most organizations, whether they're hospitals or not.
Yeah. Actually, it's true for actually just about any household.
Yeah.
If you actually think about how many people with a pulse do you have in your house versus how many items in your house have an IP address. Do that quick count, right? Like I know I have 3 people that live in my home. We're outnumbered at least 3-1 on IoT devices to humans.
Sure. I believe it.
So it's definitely evident for companies, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think companies need to understand their IoT problem, you know, but for the most part, you know, IoT or Internet of Things or connected devices, whatever you want to call them, play an increasingly important role. And so we're gonna do our best to draw some pictures and create the kind of point we're getting at. So in a hospital and in your home, many of these places share IoT profiles.
Sure. So if I'm going to do house.
Ooh, you got the house.
I'll do the house. You can do the hospital.
I'll do the hospital.
So I would see. You've got a fridge. I would say you've got a fridge. That's my bad-looking fridge. Maybe you even have a Ring doorbell, or you've got a webcam. You've got a router. You've got a TV.
So we have.
This is the old school TV. Millennials, you don't know what this is. These are rabbit ears.
We have wireless drug pumps that connect different types of IV fluids or prescriptions. Sure. We have these little things called intravenous IV tubes that deliver the drugs, and those drugs are manipulated and scheduled and dispersed using computer software that's connected to the network.
Right.
We have these things. This should look familiar.
So these are beds?
That's a bed. So these beds have onboard computers with Wi-Fi antennas that track their location wherever they are and the position that they're in.
Mm-hmm.
And so when somebody who just had back surgery lays down in one of these beds, you begin to care very much about how that wireless feature is working and whether that device is up to date and has appropriate antivirus on it. Because in both cases, if this goes wrong and delivers the drug at the wrong prescription or dosage,
the wrong dosage, yeah.
And this guy with spine surgery's bed goes from laying flat to laying like full crunch style.
You're gonna have a bad day. The individual is gonna be in a serious problem physically.
So that's like the same IoT as the little camera and doorbell. I mean, in some cases, that camera and doorbell has more sophisticated software on it than that does. And unfortunately, these devices, 20, 30 years ago when they were conceived, and this is true for a lot of the stuff we're buying in our home, are designed to run for a very, very long time,
right.
The hardware, but the software isn't designed to keep up with the changing and the changing of time. So like the devices outlive the ability for them to be supported,
right,
which creates a huge issue.
That's actually very true in the industrial control and SCADA space. Yeah. If you see what's known as operational technologies, right? So you've got kind of like large scale manufacturing where let's say you have some like large turbine action, it's doing something on or some type of, manufacturing capability on a floor, right? You'll see these say this is a $20 million machine that produces parts. Okay, it's connected to, and Matt Llewellyn from Cybody, go check him out. He coined the term cyber archaeology on this. When I went for my GICSP, which is the Industrial Control System professional designation, he was my teacher and instructor for this. He would say that as he did audits and reviews of manufacturing and OT environments, he would run across regularly these multi-million-dollar machines that were running on NT4, right? And there was no way to upgrade the system, Windows NT4, right? There was no way to upgrade the software because the hardware had no way to interoperate with the
Right.
upgraded version. So you were stuck with this old
Right. And the only option
legacy.
was to go blow a couple $1,000,000
brand new
to
machine.
get the brand new machine, which did the only thing it did more
right.
than the old machine was it ran a modern system that
Correct.
could be patched.
And that's
So
not worth the
that
capital
well,
investment.
that trade-off decision isn't falling on the side of safety today.
No. Or finances.
Yeah, or finance. Well,
Like, not
I
even-
mean, so one could prioritize human safety over finance, and you'd be a winner in my book.
So I think
But-
for your examples, yes, but for manufacturing,
Yeah.
right? If it's just
Different.
producing widgets or producing parts, no person in their right mind is going to sink another $20 million just because this operating system
Right.
can't be upgraded. If it poses no human safety or OSHA or any other concern around human or life
no.
safety, that's not going to be upgraded. Then you have to start looking at how do you protect
Right.
this, and some of that actually translates to the consumer space. Alan Alford just had a great talk
And it
on
translates
on
here
this.
too. Those protection strategies are key. But one just before, because I think
Sorry.
we should jump to that. No, it's fine. I mean, this is exactly.
Alan had a whole thing on consumer grade.
This is exactly the point. Well, Alan
quality.
is a boss.
Yeah, he
so
is.
I can't imagine everything Alan says is pretty much people should listen to.
They actually have the opportunity. Go check out David Sparks' podcast with
Right.
Alan Alford.
Alan's the man. Printers, oft
Oh, yeah.
overlooked. Huge. How do you draw a print? Okay, ready? Printer. Look, and this is like paper coming out of the printer, bendy paper. Printer. You've got thermostats, right? That
Right.
are shooting data off in every direction.
Sure.
You may not think, oh, thermostats, that's not a big deal. I'm okay with that not being patched. Well, I'm from Buffalo.
Yeah.
And if the thermostat in a hospital gets turned off
Right.
in Buffalo in March,
Yep.
you got a problem,
Yep.
right? Well, this is like the physical world
Yeah, this is how
and
it
the
all comes
digital
together,
world are
right.
like going like this on IoT.
That's exactly what operational technologies
people,
are. This
people
whole
don't
space.
they miss this piece.
Yeah.
The best single example I can get to before we jump to the protection strategy stuff is it's not just like these things you can touch and feel that are outside of you or plugged or physically represented.
Right.
Increasingly in medicine, a lot of the equipment we're implanting in people's bodies
Yeah.
to deliver care daily
Sure.
can be accessed through
Yeah.
Bluetooth, Wi-Fi.
That's why Cheney,
And some-
Dick Cheney, former vice president, specifically asked for the, I think it was the defibrillator that went into
Implant a cardiac defibrillator.
Yeah, that went into his chest. He specifically asked for the analog, the older version, even though at the time the Wi-Fi enabled version had already been come out, it had been
Right.
tested, it was shown to be safe, but he didn't want the ability for somebody to, wirelessly control or possibly kill him. I was like,
Yeah.
and I think when we look back, I even think back to that story, and it happened obviously years ago because it happened while he was, I think it was just after or during the Bush administration. People kind of laughed at it, like, well, why don't you take technology seriously? It's safe. Everyone's using it. And he was like, he actually had the foresight to be like, yeah, no, there's probably a problem that could come out of this. I don't want to have to have this thing replaced. Don't open me back up just to undo this.
No, I mean, he's right though too. Like, there are decisions being made in the design of these modern products that just make absolutely no sense when you step back from them.
Right.
So for like that example, that's a great example of maybe luck, maybe forward thinking, but one of the best protection strategies you can take, the first and probably most important beyond understanding the IoT you have on your network is preventing it from talking to other things. So
Exactly.
this thing called network segmentation, where we put computers like this on a network today, that often looks like this. One big flat happy network.
Right.
Everyone can talk to everyone.
Right.
Right, so the IoT can talk to the computers, which are reading the emails, where the clicks are being clicked and the docs are being opened, and voila, the problems of the weakest link on your network
Is the thermostat.
is the thermostat, or is the computer that finds the thermostat
Yep.
and takes the thermostat down on its way to taking everything else down.
Sure.
Right, and so the way you fix that is same sort of box as the network.
Yep.
You have a computer. Brian, do you want to draw?
Actually, I wanted to get in here. I was like,
Pictures back.
you could easily how do you just segment your network,
Yeah.
right? How do you just take your user space, segment it from your IoT space, segment it from the servers, create, the DMZ between
The
you
internet.
and the internet, right? I mean, it's everyone kind of like poo-poos the whole like bastion host, castle moat theory thing, but this stuff still applies. It's as basic as network segmentation. Your users should not be on the same networks as your servers or your IoTs. Ideally, if you mature enough, you get to a point where your HR department's not even on the same network as finance. Like, there's no reason that those two systems,
Exactly.
like user space, should even communicate. You should have the ability to communicate to the systems you need, but necessarily not to each
and
other.
this is very risk-based, right? You need to think about where the bad things occur. Most often they are on your user networks. And then how and where they can get based on the access profile of your typical user.
Right.
You need to take that into account. The other thing to take into account in the Cheney example is, look, some equipment is old, right? The only way to protect it is to shut it off from being able to be used by things other than the thing that needs it.
Right.
In the Cheney example, he said no wireless because there should never be a reason for something that's implanted in my chest to be talking to the internet. So basically prevent that.
Right.
But which is also interesting. If you look at how some of this equipment is being manufactured, literally there are implanted cardiac defibrillator devices that have a cloud controlling component. So not only are they connected to the internet, but they're connected to the internet that everyone can access and use, and that's how they're designed.
The same thing happens in the OT space. I went to a conference recently that had a whole floor of new vendors and solutions, and their biggest thing was, you can access and control all of these systems
anywhere.
From anywhere.
That's a good thing. That's a terrible thing.
It's a great idea, but probably applied poorly. Again, I think it's back to the
no two-factor on those portals. You can guarantee it because they're not even thinking about the basic security premise.
No. So. There's stories that I've heard, and I've seen one where we substations for power grids were able to be communicated to via Bluetooth because they had set it up from where the guy could sit in the car safely outside of even the fence link. The reason was because the power companies had figured out there's a higher probability of an issue or a worker injury if he enters the fence line to then go do work, right? It makes sense, right? You're coming closer to the power, or if you're near that, you can, something can happen. So they created a Bluetooth capability for him to be able to easily diagnose the substation from the convenience of that distance. Well, that distance is still accessible by somebody else should they figure out the right Bluetooth
and have a Pringles can or something.
And have all of that access. So it's it's great in theory, it's great with the intent, but the execution, is poor. And like you're saying, these all have the same exact play out, and it's all because they're within this IoT space, which is mass produce a product, create a system with a capability that allows you to easily monitor and manage it. It's all about efficiency, but don't take into account the security controls that are required because it either costs too much, it's too hard to do, we wanted to get the product out to market, or it just wasn't even part of the design thinking.
Right. Yeah, no, it makes sense.
Hey everybody, I want to thank you for watching today and listening. Hit the subscribe button up below. Check out any of the other videos previously. I want to thank my guest today, Taylor Lehmann from athenahealth, CISO there, and being on cisolife. Taylor, what can they find you on Twitter?
Twitter, Boston Cyber Guy on Twitter, and LinkedIn, just by searching Taylor Lehmann or T-Pain.
That's right. Hey, Brian Hoagley again. Thanks everybody for watching. Check you next time.